Okay, so let's go ahead and draw a little thing here just to see what we have. Okay, so what quadrant would 400 degrees lie in? That's going to be quadrant 1. Negative 140. Remember, for negative, we go counterclockwise. So that's going to be 0, negative 90, negative 180. So that would be quadrant 3. Find a positive angle that is less than 360. So we're going to add 360 to this. So we get 260 degrees. And for 742, we're going to subtract 360 several times. And we get 22 degrees. Convert to radians, so we're going to times this by pi over 180. We're going to use that ABC button. We get 9 pi over 13. So same thing with negative 132. We use that ABC button and we get negative 11 pi over 15. Remember, radians have pi. So we're going to flip that around and times it by 180 over pi. The pi's cancel. So 5 times 180 divided by 6 is 150. And then we're going to times this by 180 over pi. And we're going to get negative 180. All right, so we're going to solve for A. So this is the angle, that's opposite, this is adjacent. So if we write our acronym, SOHCAHTOA, this is going to be tangent. So the tangent of 37 is A over 250. Put a 1 underneath. A is going to equal tan 37 times 250. So in my calculator, 250 times tangent 37, that gives me approximately 188.4. All right, so this is adjacent, this is the hypotenuse, so that's cosine. So the cosine of 34 is adjacent over hypotenuse. Again, a 1 underneath, we cross multiply. B is going to be the cosine 34 times 220. So 220 times cosine 34 equals 182.4. And the last guy here, this is opposite, this is the hypotenuse, so the sine of 23 is opposite over hypotenuse. Cross multiply, so notice with this one, we have to do one more step to get that C by itself. So here we have 16 divided by sine 23, and I get 40.41. All right, so remember we use that second button for this. We're finding angle measures, so this is opposite and adjacent. So theta is tan inverse 125 over 172. So in my calculator, 125 divided by 172 equals second tangent, second answer, and I get 36 degrees. For this guy, this is opposite, this is hypotenuse, so that's sine. So theta is sine inverse opposite over hypotenuse. So sine inverse 500 divided by 2879, and I get 10 degrees. And the last guy, this is adjacent, this is hypotenuse, so theta is cos inverse adjacent over, that's not 600, my apologies folks, it's 60. So it's going to be 60 over 75. So second cosine, 60 divided by 75. And I get 36.9 degrees. All right, so state the quadrant. Remember, all students take class. So the sign is positive, so it could be here or here. Sign is not positive here. And the tangent is negative. So the tangent is negative here, not here. So we are in quadrant 2. Evaluate tangent of pi. So let's go ahead and change pi to degrees. So that is 180 degrees. So for this, we're going to be using points, our point system, because 180 degrees lies on the x-axis. So this is 1, 0, 0, 1, negative 1, 0, and 0, negative 1. So remember that tangent is y over x. So my y is 0, my x is negative 1, so my tangent is 0. All right, cosine 3 pi over 4. Let's go ahead and change the cosine of 3 pi over 4 to degrees. So 3 times 180 divided by 4 is 135. So let's go ahead and figure out 135. 135 would be here. 135 is 45 degrees away. 45, 45, 90 is going to be 1, negative 1, and root 2. So cosine is adjacent, which is negative 1, over hypotenuse. So we know that simplifies to negative root 2 over 2. All right, let's go ahead and graph some graphs. So 3 sine 2x. All right, so let's find our amplitude, which is 3. Our period is 2 pi over b, which is 2. Remember, this is my a, this is my b. So my period is pi. Remember, when there's no phase shift, my period is my endpoint. So in between 0 and 1 is a half a pi, or pi over 2. Half of a half is a quarter. And in between a half and 1 is 3/4. So we're going to go ahead, put a 2 here, a negative, not 2, excuse me, our amplitude is 3. So this is 3, this is negative 3. Our first hump is up because it's a positive 3 in front, and we have it. All right, so negative cosine 4 pi x. So my amplitude is negative 1, the absolute value of that. My period is 2 pi over 4 pi, so 1/2. So we're going to go ahead. My endpoint is 1/2. So a quarter is in between, an eighth is in between, and 3/8 is in between. Now this has a negative 1 in front. So remember, for cosine, we start at the amplitude. We go through that first point, go up, and come down. All right. 2 cosecant 4 pi x. So let's go ahead and remember our period and our amplitude. Our amplitude is 2. Our period is the same as the last, which is 1/2. 2 pi over 4 pi, which is my b, which is 1/2. So cosecant is the reciprocal of sine, if you remember. 1/8, 3/8. My amplitude is 2 and negative 2. So I'm going to use that sine graph as a basis. I'm going to put my asymptotes, and we're going to draw the humps. So let's go back and fix the one before. This should be not dotted. Both of these should be bold, sorry. Bold. Okay. Last one is negative 2 secant 4x. So my amplitude is the absolute value of negative 2. My period is 2 pi over 4, which is pi over 2. So very similar. Pi over 2, pi over 4, pi over 8, and 3 pi over 8. This is a positive 2, negative 2. So remember that this is similar to a reciprocal of cosine. So we're going to go ahead and do this. Asymptote, asymptote, half hump, full hump, half hump. Okay. All right, solve the equation. Our first step is to distribute that minus sign. So that gives us 2x plus 1 equals 2. 2x equals 1. X equals 1/2. Here we're going to get all the bottoms the same and drop them. So this needs a 3. drop the bases, so we have 3 times x plus 8 equals 23 minus x minus 3. We're going to go ahead and distribute. 3x plus 24 equals 23. Distribute. Negative x plus 3. Add this x over here minus this 24. So I have 4x equals negative 1 plus 3. So 4x equals 2. X is going to be 2 over 4, which is 1/2. Perform the indicated operations. Write answer in standard form. So here we're just going to combine like terms. For 20, we're going to distribute this negative. So 4 plus I plus 3 plus 4i. So that gives us, we always want to write 4 plus 3 is 7 plus 5i. Find the products. Notice that these are reciprocals of one another, or conjugates, I'm lying. So we only have to do the first and last, the F and the L in the FOIL. 4 times 4 is 16, negative 25i squared. Remember that I squared is negative 1. So we have 16 plus 25, which is 40. All right, so the next, is that it? All right, so the last thing, divide. We're going to go ahead and multiply by the conjugate, which is 3 plus I. What we do to the bottom, we do to the top. Since these are conjugates, we just have to do the first and the last. Here we're going to distribute, so I get 9 plus 3i. So that becomes 9 plus 3i on top over 9 plus 1, because remember that's negative 1. So my final answer is 9 plus 3i over 10.